our Community Health Board meeting to order. And approval of the minutes from March 22nd, 2022.
So move approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the meeting minutes from March 22nd, 2022. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. 3, chairperson's report. I was pleased to see at the Winona County Fair, we had a vaccination clinic going on at certain times. I did stop by and they hadn't been overwhelmed, but did have some response, some children getting theirs, some boosters and some regular vaccines, first timers. So it was a good exposure and a good effort by the public health staff. And I want to thank them for being there. Of course, it was great weather to be at the Winona County Fair. I don't think any day was too hot, and they had a nice shady tent. And so I think they were well protected, but thank you for having them there. Does anybody else have anything else to report in terms of community health? Okay, not. Move on to item 4, the consent business. 4.1, approve Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board Amendment Number 3 for Grant Project Agreement 162133 to provide supplemental funding for public health emergency preparedness and response. And that was actually page 43 in our regular agenda. Any discussion or? I do see none. I have a question, and maybe Ms. Sanis could answer. What is the Copewell project? Yeah, it's outlined in on that page 43, and I had never heard of that, and I don't know what it is.
I'm not 100% sure. I know
Okay,
Melanie Fraser is online and listening if she is available.
Okay, let me get the page 43 here.
Yes, hello everyone. This is Melanie Fraser. So the Copewell is a new program that the Minnesota Department of Health is piloting with all counties this year. It does focus on well-being. Last year it was piloted in a couple of counties and did well. So now the Minnesota Department of Health is asking each county to implement as part of their public health emergency preparedness grant. It is new to us, so we're learning more along the way, but it is a requirement of the grant to incorporate it into the grant this year. So more to come.
So, okay, so is it it's follow-up or reporting or?
It's more specific to staff well-being, and I believe what this is that, dealing with the chronic stress when we were during the dealing with, staff training and development and bringing in speakers, things like that, to be able to assist with that stress that individuals were experiencing during the pandemic while working through managing the pandemic.
Okay, so it's more staff related versus the stress and strain of the public dealing with it.
That's what.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification. Any other discussion on item 4.1?
I'll move to approve item 4.1 under consent. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve 4.1. Any other discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Thank you. Thank you. 1 second, I'll get there.
Page 9.
Yeah, I know.
That
I'm
helps.
just.
I can give you my paper copy if you.
No, that's okay. That's
If it's
okay.
not
There it is. Okay. General business. Any general business to be brought forward? Okay. If none, motion to adjourn.
Second. Oh, I think he's asking for one.
Yeah.
Make a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn,
All
if
right.
I can get a second.
I will second.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Kavesi, second by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, we are adjourned.
Welcome, everyone. The first order of business at our meeting is a public comment period. Speakers are allowed up to 2 minutes. Please, if you're here in the audience, come up to the podium, tell us your name and address, and go ahead and share with us the comments that you might have.
My name is Sarah Miles. Excuse me, I came running in. My address is 27561 Rolling Hills Road, Lewiston. I think by now you know that I've applied for funding for an incubator kitchen in Winona. If you received the email that I sent you yesterday and read that, you know that I have concerns about eligibility for the grant and what's been recommended so far. And what I found on the website, it says that businesses and not-for-profits are eligible, and it does not state municipalities. So I think that perhaps that warrants looking over the eligibility part for that that grant funding. And I would also like to point out that it specifically says businesses, but yet not one of the recommended awardees is a business, not so much as a not-for-profit supporting business. So I'm wondering, if, as Ms. Pedersen described it, was a well-rounded styles of funding, wondering why none would be supporting business. And I can understand if she's suggesting that some of the projects should be in support of more numbers of people, whereas many of the businesses are just asking for funding for their one business. I would just like to reiterate that the project that I have proposed for the incubator kitchen will not just be helping my business. It is an opportunity to help many individuals, particularly low-income individuals that could never start their own kitchen in any other way. This is also a style of, or one of the functions was to help people that have been disproportionately disadvantaged due to the pandemic, as well as the fact that it was supposed to support industries that were negatively impacted by the pandemic, which certainly includes and is specifically stated on their grocery and other food service. So this would be a way to serve a number of people in the best business sector. So I would just ask you to look into that. I'm not able to stay for any questions today, though.
Thank you.
For your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to make a public comment? Or anyone who is online, please unmute yourself if you are attending via Ring Central and maybe speak up to catch our attention. I'm going to ask 2 more times. Is there anyone here in the audience or online that would like to share during this public comment period? And for the last time, is there anyone here in the audience or attending via the internet that would like to make a comment during our public comment period? Hearing none, we'll move on. Next item of business is approval of minutes.
I'll move to approve both 4.1 and 4.2.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Commissioner Jacob has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded approval of the county board minutes 4.1, which is the approval of the appeal and equalization minutes from June 28th and the county board meeting from June 28th of 2022. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, item 5 is acknowledge receipt of approved committee minutes.
I'll move to acknowledge both 5.1 and 5.2.
Second.
Commissioner Jacob has moved, Commissioner Ward has seconded approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes from May 19th and those from the Whitewater Joint Powers Board from April 21st of this year. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Next item is consent comments and approval of the agenda. Commissioner Ward?
I do have an announcement, and I do have a request for resubmittal of a letter to the Corps. So a request for unfortunately immediate action because it closes July 15th, the public comment period,
By July 15th?
July 15th.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Yeah, I have a committee report and an announcement.
Mr. Olson?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Jacob?
When we get to item 8.7, the administration had advised that they'd like that tabled, so I just make it known that when we get to 8.7, I'll move to table that.
I don't have anything, and with us today is Alex Tillman. He is an assistant county attorney sitting in for Attorney Sonneman. Do you have anything?
No, Commissioner, thank you.
Administrator Holty?
Nothing, madam.
Okay. So there are no adjustments to the consent agenda as it was presented to us. There are a couple of additions at the end for announcements. So I think the first order is a motion to approve the agenda. If this,
So moved as presented.
Second.
give it to Commissioner Kavesi. So Commissioner Ward has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded approval of the agenda as it is set with some additions at the end. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The agenda is approved. So Administrator Holty, could you read the consent agenda for us for the record?
7.1, approve interim use permit for Harold and Lynn Brummer and Toby Brummer. 7.2, approve LG 214 premises permit application and resolution for Rolling Stone Fire Relief Organization. 7.3, approve Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board Amendment Number 3 for Grant Project Agreement 162133 to provide supplemental funding for public health emergency preparedness and response. 7.4, accept certificate of performance and authorize final payment for state aid projects 085-612-032, 085-635-009, and 085-637-028. 7.5, accept certificate of performance and authorize final payment for state aid projects 085-630-009 and 085-637-026. 7.6, confirm payment of disbursements. And 7.7, approve leased agreements with Lighten Broadcasting for emergency broadcasting services.
I'll move to approve the consent business as read.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Jacob has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded approval of the consent agenda as it was read. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is passed. We are now on to general business. Item 8.1 is to receive a jail construction update.
Good morning.
Morning, Captain.
Members and people that are out in the cyber world. I'm Steve Muslim, the jail administrator and the project manager for the jail build. Just going to give a brief description of what's going on here. So this thing, as you all know, started not so well. So we got the property, we went into the soil, we do the soil correction stuff. So we started running into a lot of delays right away, and then we ran into permitting delays and stuff with the labor industry, and it was a little bit frustrating at first. But I have to admit that Market and Johnson, we were looking at a 6-month delay in the project. Market and Johnson right now has actually moved us up 3 months on that project. So no cost to us, even taxpayers or anything. So that's a pretty good job that they actually did. So we'll actually just flip to the next page. So going over the overview of it, that Winona County Jail project has been combined effort between Winona County, Market and Johnson, Klein McCarthy Architects. Danielle is behind me back there in the back. Together, we built the team with knowledge of the solutions orientated approach to deliver a quality product. The team was dedicated to meet the needs of the county through experience, integrity, and open communication. So as we know, we actually had the Citizens Advisory Committee come together, and they came up with one of those 4 options: no jail, 72 hours, 90 days, or 1 year. 1 year was the direction that we stepped forward with, and here we are today. The next part is December. We actually thought we were going to start building in September. And we had nice temperatures, 60, 70-degree temperatures going through September, even into October. So December, finally, through a lot of pressure, I do believe, from Klein McCarthy, Market and Johnson, and the county ourselves, through the state of Minnesota, saying, hey, we need this permitting. We finally actually were given permission to start ripping up the soils. The unfortunate part was in December, we were ready. Everything was ready. Everybody was ready. But we had actually started facing freezing weather. By the time they started ripping up the soils, we were looking at 3.5 feet of frozen ground. So there was some of the soils that may have been suitable to actually go ahead and use, but unfortunately we had to use sand and stuff like that. But we trudged on through it, and we started actually doing demolition inside of the jail for the new dispatch center. Excuse me, the new dispatch center that's taking up about 40-45% of the old jail. And they brought back in on these pictures that you can see, we brought in what's called suitable soil that met the compaction rates to build for the building and for the new jail. January was the same thing. So while the excavators were still ripping up the soils, Market and Johnson had to go through and keep the soil at a temperature where not only it would meet the compaction rates, but we could actually start to put in footings for the new jail. So they managed all that stuff, and all of a sudden we started to hit the temperatures where these things were starting to be below zero. And to my surprise, my nervousness, but to my surprise, they actually met everything with inside of the budget as well too. So that was good news for us because they were fighting Mother Nature all the way. We'll flip to the next page. So in February, the foundation work continues with the Market and Johnson crew, Key Electric, and Winona Heat started to arrive on the site for the interior demo work. So we started to do more work inside of the law enforcement center. This is actually where Market and Johnson started to shine. They actually started to realize that we were 6 months behind, and there's another way that we could start to make up something. We started to just look outside the box. So continual meetings every week with administration, communities with is what can we do to get these vendors start to get busy? If they get busy, that means that the project gets done on time, and usually that means it's done within inside of the budget. So we started looking at, there's a whole bunch of ductwork that's located up in this attic, and there's a whole bunch of demolition that needs to be done continuing into the jail for the new dispatch center. So they actually started to exercise and focus on the law enforcement center, 201 West 3rd Street, aka the old jail. And the old jail was already shut down. We know that we went to our facility, and a lot of the operational changes started to happen already inside of the jail. So it afforded us that opportunity to keep on going with the demolition work inside of the jail. So March happened, and the Market and Johnson masonry crew starts to arrive, and things really start to take shape now. So we're not just looking at ground, we're not just looking at foundation. People are starting to see CME, those concrete masonry in the blocks going on up. But the first thing that went up was actually a little test wall to sort of see what the brick was going to look like, the exterior part of the buildings, how it was going to match this building, Fastenal's new building, that 1888 courthouse, and the 1977 building. And there was a little wall that was put up that was right by the entrance of the law enforcement center parking lot. And a lot of phone calls I got, not only from employees, but also from the public, thinking, is that where you're going to put the sign? Because they thought there's going to be a new sign up. We're like, well, if you actually walk around the other side, which you can't because it's a construction zone, you're going to see all the facade of what it's going to look like in the new building. So all of the colors on the back of that is showing what the colors of the building is going to be. And I know I'm skipping a little bit, but on the back of the building is actually all the new brick of what it's going to look like. And I get the advantage of climbing up on certain stuff with the crews of Market and Johnson. I've got some really nice pictures that we didn't share here, because I got so many thousands of pictures, I wasn't able to find it. But we can give tours, obviously, to the board, and we'd like to exercise that in a safe manner, walking you all through the process. You can see actually what it's gonna look like when you look back through this area. The expertise of both Klein McCarthy, Market and Johnson, and everybody that was on the committee to move forward with what this thing's gonna look like, did a really good job. You're gonna see views of the courthouse, which was from 1888. You're gonna look at a building that's only a block away, that's Fastenal, and you're gonna see that it's gonna match that quite well. It matches this building really well. And it's got a little bit of darker color to it, even matches the 1977 law enforcement center. So it was actually an excellent job. So when people come into Winona, or they leave Winona, it looks like that building's gonna belong. So along with the glass, it's not gonna be this jail big monster just sitting there. It's gonna look like it actually belongs down in the downtown area where everybody can be proud of. So April, we kept on going. This just started to mean that the weather got better, building kept on going, and things were really starting to go through. So the first installation of the structural steel started to come together. So these are the longer spans. As you know, we went to a mezzanine style jail, so we have an upper roof and a lower roof, and there's a lot of spans in between all of those. I don't know, I've done a lot of demolition, a lot of remodeling of houses. I've never done anything at this project level, and I was quite impressed. I was really like the little kid trying to put together the erector set. I was watching somebody else put together the erector set. So I was pretty impressed with it, how they can move all this equipment around, and a 30, 40, 50-foot beam is going to come into it, and they lay it right down into place. And someone sitting inside a crane doesn't see what they're laying this thing, and they're talking with each other. So there's a lot of expertise in these trades. I think a lot of people should be impressed with, and most of those trades are right from this area. So again, we tried to keep things from this area. So there was a lot of impression that's going on that nobody really gets to see. I got to see it, and that's why I'm really trying to push across that everybody in this community should be proud of really how this community came together and built this thing. This is going to be a long-term building that's going to sit there, and a lot of people are going to see it. It's not going to look like a jail. So we'll flip the page. The May comes across, the masons just continue. So here's actually starting to see some concrete floors getting laid in the masons. So this is going to be the part of the public area where people walk in, and then the jail's administration will sort of be in this area. And it doesn't really look like anything, so there's no interior walls. So underneath it, there's things that you just don't see, which is again the support for like the walls are going to go up. So Market and Johnson did a lot of things that I don't think a lot of people really were aware of, that they could have built a CMU wall right on top of this concrete, and then over time they've been seeing a lot of cracks. What they did is they actually put a lot of foundation underneath it to make sure that over time that extra weight of the CMU wall, even though it's not a part of the secured apron, doesn't crack. They upon themselves go ahead and put in these extra foundations to make sure that they got ourselves a really good building. And again, I get to see this every day. So just passing along things that I get to see, I think the community that we should be really impressed with and proud of. Just going on with all the different people. So Winona Heat, Validating, Key Electric, Danny's Construction is back to set the structural steel. So that's the one that's coming in and laying all the structural steel in the preparation of the precast. So in the June is when you start to see the large crane coming in, which I'm not gonna lie, I would like to get a ride on that crane. It goes up 265 feet. Everybody knows I like to have some fun, but I haven't gotten a ride on it. I don't think I'm gonna get a ride on it, but I keep asking for it. So that is the largest crane that you're gonna see on the site. That thing can actually, it's so powerful, it can lift up actually other cranes. It goes up 265 feet, so that's one that they use when the Mullen company brings in to actually lift up the precast and set it on top of it. I just asked one day, what is a smaller precast weight? And smaller precast are weighing somewhere like right around 11,000 pounds. We start to go 17,000, 20,000 pounds. So when you're bringing this stuff up and swinging it around for everybody's safety, that's the kind of stuff that you're looking at. And pretty impressive again to watch. So now in June, they start to get the precast up. July, the building is really starting to take the shape. Right there in the lower picture is the one that Sam Furtek took from Market and Johnson. It actually starts to show the color of the brick, what's going to start to match everything. And if it was up higher and showed this building and Fastenals, you'd clap in your hands. It's pretty impressive. But when they actually start to wash this stuff, it's gonna match it even better. Inside of there's different colored bricks that start to match Fastenal's colors along with this building, and then start to have some colored hues already inside of the courthouse. So we'll go to the next one. So the milestone event was, we planned on September, obviously, because of the labor of industry, we didn't get the permitting until December, so December 6th started the excavation. December 23rd was the state of Minnesota approval for the plans, which took a lot longer than what we expected. Really an exciting thing, even though it doesn't seem so exciting when you're talking about it, was the first footing pour, because we expected that to happen back in September, so now we're looking at, quite a few months later. In March, Market and Johnson masonry crew starts to begin, so that's when everybody drives by and they start to see the brick and the mortar coming up, so they start to see the concrete masonry units come up. And I know a lot of the public thought that this is what it's gonna look like, and we kept trying to tell them that please be patient, this isn't gonna be the end result of it. They saw the concrete masonry unit, they thought that looks ugly. Then they saw the spray going onto the building for like the moisture barrier, so when you build a wooden house, you put a tie back wrap around it, well, this is concrete, so you put some other stuff onto it, and that was the spray that goes onto it. They saw the black, they thought, this is what the color is gonna be, and we're like, patient, this is all part of the building process, and outside of that goes the insulation, and then comes the brick. So it's starting to come together, so that last picture started to show what the brick is. They're doing the back side of the building first, because it's a construction site. If they didn't do that first, all of a sudden it'd be really hard to get around it. You gotta remember, these cranes are coming in, they're extremely heavy. The product that they're looking up is extremely heavy. There's gonna be those water retention boxes that are inside of the parking lots, and you start to put cranes on top of it, they're gonna crush them. So this is all part of this process that had to happen. So it would have been neat to sort of do the front first, so everybody sees that and what it's gonna start to look like, but it's sort of happening the other way around. And just yesterday, we were over, Market and Johnson and myself were over talking to the neighbors on 4th Street right behind this building process, inform them where we're at. Also to inform them that at the end of this month, we're gonna have that street lane closure, that if they need to close it off for the water connections and the gas line connections, and how we're working with them to make sure they get to the driveways, all possibilities. They're happy to see this. They're happy on that side to see the brick facade come out, because now they can start to see what it's gonna look like. And I told them that we will share the final renderings pictures with them, so they can actually see what the glazing is gonna look like behind it, and then the hidden generator, which actually they were very impressed with, because the current generator, they said it's extremely loud, and it's really gonna quiet it up quite a bit. So that's all I had. If there's anything else, like I said, for me, that's pretty brief. I think that's why I made this, like, talk that much briefly.
Mr. Ward?
Yes, I've got several questions, Officer Buswell. Budget, you keep saying we're on budget, but we have had to expend dollars and cents on a lot of things that weren't anticipated. Are we still on budget?
We're still inside of the contingency. We're still, so as far as the gross maximum product, the gross maximum price that Mark and Johnson made for the bill, we are on budget completely. The surprises came with the soil correction. So that $250,000 was an absolute shock. But if you remember when I first came to the board, the projections were at a minimum $200,000, and we were actually looking more towards $500,000 to $600,000. So we got lucky. For being unlucky, we got lucky. It ended up being right around $250,000. So
But are we at the max of our contingency fund? So where are we maxing out?
I would have to say that when we looked at it even this morning, that we're about 50% of the jail build, and we're roughly just slightly a little over 50% of the contingency, a little over 600,000.
I think it's trending well. Obviously, that initial hit right away, peaked it a lot earlier than we would like to. But with what we've seen with the structure getting up, the demolition in existing areas, some of the unknowns for that stuff are being done. We're comfortable with what we have.
So at the end, the bottom line will be how many $1 million project with the
I would say
contingency?
right now, everything is still, I would just base it off of whatever that GMP original cost was at 28. I don't remember the exact dollar.
So the whole price thing was at $213,000. That was everything.
That was the contingency?
That included everything.
owner items,
Yep,
contingency,
owner items.
construction, Clyde McCarthy, the whole project
Purchase of the
cost,
property.
FF&E and everything.
The 28 million we're still holding to.
I would say, yeah, I wouldn't, just knowing with, I wouldn't want to promise anything at this time, to be honest, just because there is a lot of duration. Like we still have a year
Sure.
basically left of the project, so.
Okay,
But I would say yes, I mean, we're trending to be on budget.
okay. And I know building the building is only part of running a jail. How are we coming on operation procedures and training schedule?
Right now,
Have we started that?
we're a little bit behind, but we actually, that's why before we came in the board, we hired, we're moving towards Lexipol for a company for our policies and procedures. Lexipol is used nationally. Sheriff's Department through patrol's been doing it for, since Dave Rand was the sheriff, so 20 years plus. Jail is moving towards Lexipol. Sheriff Andrew, who wanted to be here today, making this presentation, but unfortunately he's ill, wanted the jail to move forward to that Lexipol. So we're doing it, but it's such a monster that we hired them to actually help slave in the 241-021 statute to make sure that we're meeting all the statutory requirements in our policy. And then obviously the 2011, which is the promulgated rules made by the Minnesota Department of Corrections. This is a monumental task that takes just in itself 6 months. And we just did that now a little over a month ago, and they're planning on giving us that back to us by August. So when August happens, then we have Dave Fruth, Sergeant Fruth, and Sergeant Kelsey Forrest on board to be part of the transition team with the policies and procedures with me. And obviously, we're sitting down with the administration, and obviously Sheriff Andrew, our administration, to work on how we're going to rehire people back, get them back into the jail, get them trained appropriately, and that'll all be happening during that. Remember, the jail now is planning on coming back with us right around June of 2020. If everything stays on track, sticking to the National Institute of Corrections guidelines, which is how to open a new institution, which is going to be a 90-day training or phasing into it, both us and dispatch. So September of 2023 will be with inmates with the staff and the policy on board, and that those will be approved by the Minnesota Department of Corrections as well.
And so you gave me the timeline. You raised the question, if the concrete cracks. So what's our warranty if the concrete cracks?
Good question.
Yeah, no, I would say, well, everything for workmanship side of it, I think this project has a 2-year warranty, I believe. I have
Okay.
to take a look again on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the cure time and everything, we obviously do everything. Other big factors is a lot of it's polished concrete. So we have to protect it when we're installing masonry, cover it up, precast grouting, all that stuff, make sure the lists aren't leaking oil and all that stuff. So we're doing everything that we, cure time, making sure it's okay to put lists on any of that stuff before. I mean, obviously concrete, we put control joints and stuff in there to control cracking. Can't guarantee it. Everything doesn't always crack.
All-
Concrete does.
In my opinion, all
And it
concrete
does,
cracks
it's true, but
sometime.
Obviously that's the reason we either put rebar and control joints where we have them so that if it would crack their control, then it's an intended crack to be where it is. Not some big gaudy crack right down the center of the room.
Yeah, 2 years, nothing will show up. Year 5 to 10, I think they'll start showing up. My experience with pouring concrete. Okay,
With it being interior though, I would hope there's more control to it, there's no heaving and salt and it's a sealed product and it's a finished product too, so.
but you're built on a sandbar.
Yeah, but we did bring a lot of new fill in areas outside the soil correction that had to be, just to meet capacity and compaction. So we actually did have to go down a couple of feet of sand. It wasn't like we actually built on, brought in fill from other projects from the parking lot.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Please get a hold of me if you'd like to make a tour, and we'll make those dates and stuff. I know there's a few interested, and we'll keep on going. We just want to make sure that we do it in a safe manner, so a day that I might plan in advance might change, or if we change like planking or something else going on, but we'll definitely work around it.
Yes. And I'm sorry to say, I do not want you to go on that crane. I do not want a workman's comp claim on falling off of a,
But afterwards,
you still, no.
We're trying to get the mod under control.
Actually, one thing with that, just to comment on it too, actually have a joint venture with OSHA on the project that they come on the site and walk through with us and show them what we're doing, just to make sure that we're complying with everything too. So something that Minnesota does, the joint venture with OSHA, so it's something good to do on a project like this too, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't think any action on this item is required by the board, so we'd be ready to move on. Item 8.2, discuss, provide direction, approve recruitment plan for county administrator. And Pat Melvin, I think, is online.
Looks like Pat is.
Good.
mute.
Oh, there we go.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members and staff. Thank you for allowing me to participate remotely. I will jump into the video here. So the time has flown since we were sitting there on January 6th when we interviewed 6 candidates for the county administrator position. And unfortunately, didn't find a good match for Winona County. So I'm prepared to go ahead and do that process again. Provided in your packet was basically the same information that we had reviewed for the previous recruitment. One of those changes was made to the salary range. We adjusted that so that it's currently at $124,000 to $175,000 for the county administrator position. The profile has been updated in terms of dates. We would be looking at advertising again for about a 4-week period, and then basically follow the same process as last time, unless there's a desire from anybody to modify that. So I will certainly open it up. Are there any questions or anything that I can answer? I know I had sent an email out a short while back, just kind of seeing if there was anything. Is there anything at this time?
Mr. Ward.
Good morning, Pat.
Morning.
A question on timing, and from your company's perspective and your perspective, we're looking at projected start date November of 2022. And we have an election in November of 2022, and we have a board that may change. Do you think that's a concern for anybody applying? Is there some hesitancy in them applying, knowing that a board could change?
I think that individuals will take a look at that, and certainly they like to have stability. They like to know what they're getting into. So that may be a consideration. That's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
But we did have last time when we had interviews, we had some candidates that expressed concern with the makeup of the past of boards. So it just rose to my curiosity.
Yes. And, I think the question was asked, I know that DDA Human Resources gives a 2-year. I mean, if the board would like to extend that out further, to do the recruitment later than that, that is certainly an option that we'd be willing to work with if the board chose to do that, so that there was maybe the candidates would know what the board is going to be at that time.
Mr. Jacob, were you done, Commissioner?
Yes. Thank you.
This board potentially changes every 24 months. This process is already into what? I don't know, 18 months. So to try to move the process forward or backward based on the makeup of this board, I think is doing a disservice to the community. That we should be moving to continue to work to replace the administrator or fill the administrator position. So I don't have any, and if there was concerns by the previous candidates over the makeup of this board, the fact that there's an election coming up soon, maybe that'll encourage them to apply. So
Yeah, I totally.
Or maybe,
we need to
yeah,
keep it moving forward. Absolutely.
I don't have any concerns with changing the timing.
Are there other thoughts? Not, I have a- Mr. Melvin, you said there's a 2-year, I think, timeline. So if we failed to make a decision in calendar 2022 and somehow the decision got pushed into 2023, would there be an additional charge?
No, basically, this second recruitment, all that gets charged to the county are those expenses that we incur, direct expenses. But my time and my effort is not being charged to the county for the second recruitment. So if it goes into 2023, no, it won't be any different than if we were to go ahead and post now.
Are there other questions or comments? Mr. Jacob?
Well, I would make a motion, but by not making a motion, I think it's fair to assume that we're just going to stay on schedule and continue with the process that we made a motion on back in January or on January 11th. So I support just continuing forward with what's been presented in this part of our packet, this 8.2. I see everything. Didn't see anything in there that I wanted to change or would do differently. So I would say just stay the course and move forward with the process. I think the change in salary is going to have a big effect on potential candidates.
Oh, am I right that there is a change in the salary from what we approved back the last time we voted on this in January? I'm asking only to discover if it is recommended that we actually have a motion to approve moving forward with the information here and the timeline that we've been given.
We changed the. I don't know if you're asking me. You're looking this direction.
No, I was looking at the administrator and the assistant attorney, county attorney.
Madam Chair, I would ask that you approve it because the timeline is new. So if nothing else, approving that timeline, that you're in agreement with it.
Yeah, I'll move to approve 8.2 as presented.
Second.
Commissioner Jacob has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded item 8.2, which would be to approve the recruitment plan for the county administrator as presented in the document that comes from David Down and Associates. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Item 8.2 is approved.
Pat, have any other questions for us before he signs up?
I just wanted to let you know that I will plan on coming to your meeting on September 13th, at which time we will be looking at those that had applied and we'll be selecting finalists to invite in for an interview. I would just ask that you reserve October 13th, which is a Thursday, for conducting interviews of those candidates. So if there are any changes or anything that need to be made to the timeline, if you could let me know as soon as you realize there's a conflict, I would certainly appreciate it. And I look forward to working with all of you again as we go through this process. So.
Just one point, Mr. Melvin, your camera is severely out of focus. It
Okay.
looks like you're coming from San Francisco or trying to simulate a visual impairment. I'm not sure which, but
It is really me. I'm not I'm not incognito. I will get that corrected. Thank you for pointing that out, Madam Chair.
just in case you weren't aware of.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you much for your time and look forward to working with you all.
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 8.3 is to discuss or maybe approve an investigation into the courthouse roof long-term options.
Good morning, Dave Kramer, County Highway. My position also oversees highway project that county. I appreciate that. Also have, along with the building grounds and police superintendent, there and be any questions.
Good idea.
So the Winona County Courthouse was built in 1888 to 1889. If you fast forward 110 years, the building is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And in the 1990s, there was a, at that point, the roof was 110 years old and there was a need to do something with it. The original slate roof itself was in pretty good condition, but some of the flashing was experiencing some deterioration. In November of '98, the county board approved replacing the slate roof with a new slate roof. And that construction took place in 1999, we believe. And obviously the expectation is it would have a similar life expectancy as the original one, so it probably last until the end of this century that we're currently in. Unfortunately, that has not been the experience. The roof has been susceptible to damage during windstorms. Typical thunderstorm might take some tile off the roof. The December 15th storm of last year had some significant damage, and we've got some photos of that. This is probably the worst of the locations. The pictures here. There's also some isolated spots and areas with lifted tile. So this is a close-up of the location that had the biggest amount of damage. If you look closely, you can see some of the tiles are still in place, but kind of lifted up. It appears that the tiles are being lifted by the wind and pulled out. I mean, in this case, there's a little area missing. You've got the roofing felt there that's partially missing, and it's down to the plywood decking. There's 3/4 inch plywood decking that was placed as part of the re-roofing project. Next picture. This is a kind of a close-up of some of the debris that was left in one of the valleys. And they're at hazard of falling down basically at any time once they're loose. You see the debris here from the nails that were pulled out. Next picture. Here again, it's kind of a picture of an isolated spot, and you can see on the bottom left part there's some tiles that are kind of lifted up just a little bit. Next picture, please. And these are all in your packet. And this is probably one of the biggest issues from a safety standpoint is when they fall off the roof, these pieces come down to the ground. I've got some samples that I'll pass around with your permission. These are some pieces that I actually picked up off the ground last December. This piece, you can see the corner of one of the tiles, and the tiles are fastened with two nail holes. This is a piece, you see the corner of the tile, and then when they break, they're pretty sharp. This is about as sharp as the paring knives that are in my kitchen door. I'll pass those around, if that's okay. Also have some samples of the nails. So these are fastened with copper nails. They're like 1.5 inch roofing nails, but they're copper instead of steel.
Are those ribbed? I don't see those.
I'll pass these. These are not ribbed. These are the ones that the tiles are fastened with, and they're not. So when we're doing,
I'm wondering why they didn't screw those.
that's the
Historical. They're historical nails.
well, these were new nails with the installation. So the nails that are being used for the repairs are 3 inch in their ring shape. So they'll have a lot
Makes a big
more
difference.
resistance to pulling out. So in a typical year, we're spending $10,000 to $15,000 on just repairs of, typical wind damage. We'll take a few tiles loose. Last December was kind of a big event. It was just under $40,000 of damage. And, we had to cordon off some sidewalk areas during the time until both the repairs could be arranged and do that. Once that's repaired, then, able to use the sidewalks again. So I guess what staff is recommending is we'll do the research and present you with some, I guess, additional information. We think that just continuing as we are is probably not the best option. That we should look at some other things. So the type of things that we're thinking of looking at, looking at what's the best to do with this roof. A potential option would be rehabilitating the existing roof, like removing it and getting basically the tiles refastened with better fasteners. Other options could be completely replacing it. Sometimes when you do a removal and replace, the extra labor of trying to salvage those materials actually costs as much as the material. So we look at, does it make sense to just replace it with a brand new slate roof? Does it make sense to replace it with a metal roof? There are some metal roofs now with patterns and colors that even from a few feet away, it's hard to tell that it's not slate from the ground. I don't think you'd be able to tell. Certainly the historic consideration is important, and whatever is done with the roof will need to match the character of the building. So we'll need to make sure we follow that piece. One thing we'll look at is was there a defect in either the specifications or the construction, and is there really anything we can do about that? There is a statute of limitations. My suspicion is that has expired, but we'll look at that aspect, and if that hasn't expired, then we'll follow down that path. But if it has expired, it's kind of a too bad so sad. It's basically the comes to deal with at this point. So the thought is we'll bring back, kind of do some research, bring that information back for your consideration. I think to go with that. Probably unlikely we would be able to get anything ready for any work this year yet, considering material contractor availability. Lead times are worse than they typically have been at this point. So I don't think it probably if whatever's going to be done would be next year. And obviously this isn't something that's budgeted, so that would have to be something that we talked about also. But we don't think just keeping doing what we've been doing the last few years is a good approach for that move, that we should investigate some other options and bring that back for your consideration. So that's what we're looking at.
Commissioner Kavesi had a question, and then Commissioner Jacobs.
Yeah, the pictures are compelling, and the liability risk, I would say, is very high when I saw that tile or that slate piece sticking out of the ground.
We've been fortunate, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a risk if one of these tiles comes off of that roof.
So that's a continuing risk, obviously, so don't know how we can protect ourselves from that. Are we experiencing leaking? I saw one of the pictures were down to the wood.
Yeah, so I don't, maybe you can answer that, Aaron. I'm not aware that we have. Obviously, when the material was off during the December to, I don't know, February, whenever we got it prepared, that there was potential for leaking. Experience, Danny, that you're aware of?
No, before the December 15th storm, we haven't had any roof leaks with the current slate things. When the storm came, we did have some exposed sheeting, but we were fortunate enough, it was a winter time. We don't get a lot of rain at that time. And just where that peak was, we don't get a lot of snow either, but we kind of monitored it, through the process. That and Leviger came. We monitored it, looked in the attic and everything else we could do, but we didn't have any leaks, and we currently do not have leaks.
Are there any mitigating factors that we would need to do to address to prevent leaks between now and a year or year and a half from now when we actually are going to repair it?
I think it would just be repairing any damage that happened.
Okay.
Between now and then. Obviously, the more significant damage would, potentially be leaks. A couple tiles comes off, generally that the water's mostly able to sheet off of that, and then there's the roofing felt underneath that is kind of a backup, so that should prevent most of that.
Okay. And when you talked about the possible defect in construction, we're looking into the possibility that the company is responsible for part of this, or?
So there's two aspects of that. There was an architectural firm that put together plans that specified, and they specified the copper nails. They did not specify ring shank, and then with the contractor, they had means and methods that so there's both of those aspects that are
potentially something wasn't as it should have been, but the first thing that we'll look at is what is the statute of limitations, and if that's expired, that whole issue just falls to the wayside. I don't think that's.
Generally 10
Yeah.
years for statute of repose for construction.
Okay.
There is a tolling provision if it was not discovered initially, but given your representation of this being in 1999, I probably imagine the 10 years is up.
It's well up.
It sounds like it.
20 plus
Yeah.
at this point.
Are we looking for artisans rather than roofing companies or because of the historic nature? Or, I mean, I'm just thinking, I know some of the renovations with copper roofs, they've brought in people from Switzerland because these are skills that are not readily available, although slate roofs are still being installed, but
So with the insurance adjusters that we talked with, their indication is they don't typically see this kind of problem with slate roofs. They're
Yeah.
usually very resilient
yeah,
and long-lived. They also mentioned a specific contractor out of the cities that specializes in, slate roofs, historic roofs, this style
Okay.
of roof.
Yeah.
So that's one of the avenues that we're going to, kind of
yeah,
pick their brains and see, what's going on here. And if we do a project, we'll, look at, a best value and see if that we can, set up a scenario where that might be a contractor that might do some work, but that's really jumping ahead to this. We don't know what's going to be the best.
yeah.
We need to do some legwork before we, jump
Right.
to,
I just, the Twin Cities is much closer than Switzerland,
Oh,
so let's
absolutely, yeah.
keep that. Yeah,
No, it's not like, rehabilitating the stone house in the Whitewater.
well, the cap, I know what you mean.
Monarch House.
Yeah.
Marnock.
Masons gave,
Yeah.
that to the manner of the original settlers that had constructed it. It's not something like that. There's people in the Midwest that
Good.
are very, very competent, specialized in this type.
But we just need to be safe and also prevent damage, roofs, leaks and things. So I appreciate the
All of
work.
those are concerns.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that you're doing. And it wouldn't help necessarily to put up a sign or anything like that, because how can you be careful if a slate
Yeah.
blows?
Then you're admitting you got a problem.
Well,
We know there's a problem. I mean, this is all public records. There's not, there's
Yeah.
no, we know that the roof is, can be problematic, but, when we have a specific windstorm, tile issues that will, put up, respond appropriately based on what's going
Yeah.
on, but, today, there's no hazard to walk around that building from, no extraordinary hazard.
right, and we don't have any underground entrances or things like that that we can use temporarily. So I mean, it's still it's a public building, and
Well,
people
there is
are,
an underground entrance, but.
well, it's,
Selective.
Only if you're wearing orange.
yeah, only if you're wearing orange and clogs, I think, but yeah, Crocs. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your work on this.
Commissioner Jacob?
Well, my first concern and thought is the company that sold this and installed this roof, if they're still in business and you sell somebody 100-year roof and 23 years into it, it's failing at this level, they hold some responsibility. And I don't care if it's some type of 10-year statute of limitation. That's not good business for that company. Just like Market and Johnson, when Steve Buswell was talking about, they went ahead and put in stronger footings where needed. Best management practices are, if you're in business, you're going to do it right. And if you do a substandard job and represent something as being a 100-year product, I feel like they clearly need to be held accountable if they exist and they're still. Do we know? Do they exist? Are they out of business? Are they still?
Just to clarify a couple of points, the 100-year product is my own, thing that I'm saying based on how long the original roof lasted. And, my understanding of what would typically be expected of a slate roof. That's not, I have not come across anything in the, project documentation that anybody warranted So the contractor that installed the roof was Ledigars, who has also been the contractor who we've had doing annual repairs, and who also did the repairs after the last December's damage. So, you know, they're still a going concern. We have them do roofing work for us on a routine basis, and they do generally quality work. We have no reason to disparage them.
But we do now.
But, you know, what, you're right. This did not turn out how it should have. You know, maybe right and wrong, you know, maybe should stand behind it, but we also operate under the law. And if the law says we can't hold their feet to the fire, that's the law.
Well, so if we're still using them now for these repairs, is that what you're saying?
Yes, so they are a relatively local company with expertise, and you know, we're using different nails, but they were the company that did the repairs recently.
And the idea of putting a longer nail into a 3/4 inch piece of plywood, I don't see where that, I mean, the plywood's only 3/4 inch thick. That's what you just.
You're correct. 3/4 inch plywood, and you know, in some cases, we're gonna run, you know, some of the.
You could hit a stud, yeah.
Most of the nails wouldn't. One of the benefits of a little bit longer nails, if you start to get a little bit uplet, you don't have to start at the nail all the way to pull out. You still got, you know, the full length of the nail. In plywood, but I think the ring shank versus the knot is probably the biggest aspect, but nevertheless, I think what we're suggesting is we'll try to figure out where we go from here, and bring that information.
I would just be using screws.
You know, and I'm not an expert in slate roofing. I don't know if that's the, you know, the state is to do that, but that's one of the things that I thought about in my own mind also. When the contractors that specialize in this would certainly be able to help us out.
Commissioner Jacob, were you done?
Yeah.
I think Commissioner Ward
Yeah,
had some
yeah.
questions.
Okay, yeah, in my opinion, screws would be a better option, but when you start looking at this, even the head of the nail sitting there, there's not much there to hold. So you can see where wind would start to, going forward, doing your research, I appreciate that. But I think we need to look at funding sources too. Is there any, because this is a historical building, sometimes there's dollars and cents for working on historical buildings. So I would definitely look at that. And yeah, this is absurd. But, and then this was really absurd. These little tiny nails sticking through this. My husband just left, but I know screws and I know screw guns, and we do a lot. We don't nail anything anymore. Everything's screwed, but it just, that isn't enough to hold this big heavy piece. But if you collect these things, we could probably sell them to those that are really historic buffs, because with permission, I have a piece of the old courthouse. It was part of the thing around the Gorgot. With permission, I have it at home in my garden. So I think we could sell these to the historical people. They would really,
That's possible. There's people who will buy a piece of sod from
a football field or something, yeah, and keep it on it. So can I keep this little piece?
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna keep that little piece. Add it to my collection. But and then, Ben Klinger, through the emergency declarations, did anything happen when we had that big storm? Just even here a couple, but I suppose this is long-term accumulation.
Well, this December storm, this was covered essentially by our insurance less the deductible.
Yeah.
This I don't think was any part of any disaster. We did have a storm probably been a month and a half ago now that actually I think we'll have a state declaration.
Okay.
That's separate from this.
Yeah.
That storm, got some rain in parts of the county, but it wasn't a windy here, so it did not affect the courthouse.
And personally, I would be leaning towards something other than this, because it doesn't seem like this is going to be the steel. And I agree with you, the steel, we've seen a lot of improvements in steel.
Part of my thoughts go that way also, but I think we need to look at all the options and see what makes sense from a cost and longevity standpoint and bring that information back.
Sure. Thank you.
Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah, so if we're using Lediger to do the repairs, have we talked to them about any warranty? Have they taken, have we even discussed whether they feel any responsibility in this?
When I contacted Ledger about get an estimate for the damage, asked about warranty and stuff like that, they tried to find the record of when they even installed it. They did not have a record. I found a record in the file cabinet that was from the 99. And at this point, we talked about fasteners, lengths of fasteners. Why do you use the longer ones versus the short ones? They say grip length and, you know, the nail working out. But the nail that they used when they did the roof was the nail that was stacked out by the architect. So they used, their comment is we used the nail that was told to us by the architect.
Well, clearly a bad choice. So what about insurance? What if this is storm damage? Is the insurance, are they responsible? I mean, before we go to the taxpayer, we want to make sure we've.
So the December 15th was, the number in your board pack, $39,900 roughly, to repair it. That was storm damage and that was covered under our insurance under MCIT. But to go through and rehabilitate the roof, I can't imagine that it would be covered by insurance, but we can double check that.
So what are they saying they're going to do with the $39,000? They're going to replace
Fix
these
it.
slates or
It's
what?
already done.
Yeah.
The work is done. You saw the patches of roof. So we do have some materials of the slate from when the roof was replaced in the 1990s. We still have some.
So this picture is not current. This has been
Oh,
repaired.
right, those were pictures from, after the,
December.
after the storm damage, that's all been replaced if you were to.
Well, I was-
Take a look at the building now.
I was on the same page as Commissioner Kavesi. She was looking at, is this potentially leaking right now? And looking at the exposed
What was the
plywood.
timeframe of the repairs? February?
I believe it was February,
Okay.
So
end of February.
Mhm.
so we have to wait for the snow conditions to be appropriate.
Sure.
So you can't do roofing when there's ice and snow on something. So it's all repaired at this point. So right now it's in good shape, but based on history, we would expect when we get a thunderstorm come through with some high winds, we're gonna have some more.
So do we need a motion to investigate into courthouse roof long-term options? Also move that we continue to investigate and come back with a report.
Second.
Commissioner Ward has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded to approve investigation into the courthouse roof long-term options. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Marcia will have a new building on her
No,
side
I'm gonna
lot.
put it on my desk, See,
Use it for a chalkboard.
that's
Teeny
right.
tiny
true.
chalkboard.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Item 8.4 is to receive our monthly finance and budget update for May of 2022. And I see Pat is online.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'll start out with the May report. Beginning cash in May was 9.9 million. Actual revenues were 776,000. Actual expenses were 1.5. Ending balance in the general fund was $9.1 million. For the year, beginning balance started out at $14.8 million. Actual revenues were 3 million. Actual expenses were 8.7. Ending cash is $9.1 million. The variance from this year to last year was a negative 5.6 compared to a negative 6.2. For all the funds that are being represented here, it's a negative 8.5 compared to a negative 10.1 million last year. I do want to point out that the Human Services Fund is actually in the negative for May at $2.4 million. I did look at that currently because taxes were settled in June. They're about 500,000 in the negative. So there has been an improvement in that area. Any questions?
Pat, can you share the screen, the document? Is that possible? Don't we usually have the document up for people to see? Okay, if we can't find, that's okay. Just that people should be able to see what we're talking about.
Not today.
Okay, not today?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any questions on this document? If not, we can go to the summary budget. Summary budget starts out at $19 million. Actual revenues are 9.7. Actual expenses are 18.1. Ending cash is 10.6 million. Variance is 8.4 compared to 10.1 million. Any questions on the summary document? If not, we'll go to the summary budget. May represents 42% of the year completed. Looking at the items, the only one that is at 42% is highway, and highway is one of the funds that is the ups and downs because of how the revenues and expenses occur. And right now they're in their construction season. So at this point, things are looking not too bad compared to where we are with the in May. I do want to point out with the interest, we had budgeted $250,000. We're at $24,000 at the present time. Interest rates are very low at the present time. Any question at this document? If not, thank you.
Thank you. We have a 5-minute recess. And I would like to call the meeting back to order. Item 8.5 is to discuss, modify, or approve the American Rescue Plan Funds grant requests. We had asked staff to come back with us with a bit of additional information.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you found in your information packet the materials.
Just for the record, Laura, could you introduce yourself?
My apologies. Laura Pedersen, currently serving as the ARP Funds Grant Coordinator. So within your packet, it looks just about the same, but there was an additional column added to the table noting additional information for every single project that was submitted, whether it was in the quote unquote table of highly recommended, recommended, or not recommended for both external special project funds as well as the internal county-based or county department-based projects. So that information was taken from both the applications that were already submitted as well as requests were made to any applicants in which the information around impact and kind of resulting COVID impacts that they were feeling as an organization and how it related to the particular project that they submitted. So requests were made if that was not already in their original application, and that is all included here in your packet. If I may provide 3 updates that I received after the information was provided to you. On my document, it's the Winona Friendship Center. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's on page 5. It's under the recommended projects. It's the 3rd project down. The contact got back to me via phone call, and the end of the additional information would be that the additional tablets that they are requesting funding to purchase would allow additional participants. Currently, 4 people are served through their iPad program and 7 people called Friendships Forever, and the funding would ensure the continued use of 7 iPads, and ultimately the program could serve up to 21 people per day. That would be their maximum service. Additionally, under the not recommended projects, the Polish Institute and Cultural Museum provided me with a response via phone call, noting that the museum typically serves through both museum visitors and annual events around 4,000 people. Typically per week, they see around 60 visitors. Schools as well as external sort of organized tours utilize the Polish Museum. And the director's rough guesstimate was that throughout the year, there are about 1,000 museum visitors, and they are seeing increased visitor numbers post-COVID or major COVID, excuse me. There are 2 Polish museum projects. So just to note, that the same information applies to both of those. And then finally, I had a conversation with the submitter for the Winona Athletic Club, also under the not recommended projects. And he originally had provided that their current membership was at 200, but he provided an update to that, and their current membership is 375. Yeah.
Any of the information that was provided by the speaker at the beginning of the meeting regarding eligibility, is that
Sure, I
correct
can
or
provide some
incorrect,
response to
or-
that. So my understanding of the speaker's concerns about municipalities being eligible for funding is not warranted. Under the U.S. Treasury Fund stipulations and guidelines, there is no explicit language that municipalities or other local governments are ineligible for funding. Within the Treasury codes for reporting, transfer of funds to other government units is allowable and is a label, I guess you would say, that you can have. My understanding of the language that she is referring to is really county-based language around the Special Projects Fund, and that we noted nonprofits and businesses were eligible to apply, but that doesn't mean municipalities are ineligible to apply or to receive the funds in general. In addition, I would note that this board made the decision to spend $2 million on small business grants, and those were administered through the county, originally a $1.5 million. And then I believe it was December, it may have been January, the board determined an additional $500,000 was warranted due to the demand and requests that the chamber received.
I'd like, just this follow-up to those comments, though, did not you municipalities also receive ARPA funds?
They did. So depending on the size of the municipality, they received a certain amount of money. And I do not know what the municipalities represented here received for funding.
Yeah, I did send her a note last night. I'm not sure that she received it based on her comments, but I explained to her that there was a framework, that there was 2 million that was dedicated to businesses, and that in the framework under special projects and programs, we talked about being directed by the Engage Winona survey. And it does say Winona-based agencies and local government partners. So it seems to me that the language from our framework, that at least is that's what I said to her, is that that's what I intended to use as my guidance. Jacob.
Well, I guess as we move forward and how we're going to proceed with this, I've got to state some frustrations of our federal government taking money really from either our grandchildren or printing money that doesn't exist, and then distributing billions, trillions nationwide, millions to our county, and then asking this county board to decide where that money goes. When I ran for office 10 years ago, I never in my wildest dreams conceived that I'd be sitting here making decisions about where to spend millions of dollars of printed money from the federal government. So I don't know how this falls into a county commissioner's job description, but for me, doing anything other than what's been brought forward in this document by those that have taken a great deal of time and put a great deal of effort into this, doing anything other than what's laid out will be hard for me to support. So I just had to express some of those frustrations.
I concur with Commissioner Jacob. I mean, why are we trying to, and in my own opinion, trying to get cute somehow in spending this federal government dollars? I mean, some of the projects, I mean, it's not that there's a bad project in here, but when I first, the ARPA information came out, and then they changed their mind in April, so that we got caught in the timeline that we thought we had to delegate to different categories, and we we actually created a team, and I guess I misunderstood that we really didn't use that team that was in one of the documents, the 4 community people. They never did review the Buffy Bronick, and we went away from that. So we
might recall that the legal counsel indicated that those organizations all applied for grants.
Right,
Therefore, it was
right.
inappropriate for them
But-
to be the decision makers.
But a very small group of people came up with this list, not to demise, any of the work, and a lot of work was done. But when I see, so my opinion of this ARPA and everything was, it was supposed to be tangible, hardcore things initially, roads, bridges, infrastructure, broadband. But if you look at the Engage Winona reports, like question 4 talks about infrastructure, question 2 talks about lowering the taxes, question 3 talks about internet and roads. Question 1 was more of a general welfare type of thing. But we've got projects recommended on this list for staffing. And I really have a problem of paying for staffing, knowing that next year, where are they going to get the dollars for staffing? Their normal reaction in the past history has been, well, come back to the county. They funded it once, they'll fund it again. I just don't feel that that's what I'm supposed to be using taxpayer dollars for. Again, not that they're bad. And the question too is that there was amount requested and the minimum amount needed. Those don't always totally match up. But as it was suggested to me by some citizens, is that, maybe we lower the maybe get them started with half of what, was minimum needed, and let them, especially in staffing and everything, to come up with concrete plans of how not to come back to the county to continue funding this thing, this, particular area. Like, I'm sorry, a syringe exchange program. I'm sorry, I don't know that ARPA funds COVID infrastructure relates to a syringe exchange program. Again, not that it's not, warranted, but again, to give them money to do that. And then, some of the things are staffing. A couple of them are staffing, a couple of them are creating programs for car repair. Some are computers and such, which is infrastructure. And then Catholic Charities of Southeast Minnesota requesting staffing and startup costs to develop a scattered site housing. Yes, housing is important, but they're asking for staffing. And again, would we be able to give them staffing dollars next year? The list is problematic in my opinion, and I'm not sure how to sort through it. I'm looking for suggestions.
Yeah, I appreciate that we all have different points of view up here. What I don't appreciate is discussion that relies on talking points. I'd rather look at facts. The reason we're here and the reason our role is to look at these options is because of the pandemic. The pandemic affected our community greatly. It affected businesses. It affected certain segments of the population. It affected mental health. All of those things, I think, are pretty well reflected in the Engage Winona survey. And yes, it's an unusual role for us to do this, but I think it is our role to attempt to put some things back in order and to reverse some of the impact of the pandemic. People were isolated. Business was down, restaurants were impacted. This is our job right now. So I'm looking for a way to address these projects. Are we going to go through them individually and have discussions, or how would we like to proceed?
Mr. Olson?
I'm gonna just agree with Commissioner Jacob that, the list that's presented to us is a result of the process that we put in place, and to second guess everything is, I think, beneath the process that we set forward. So I would be willing to take the list as it's presented and make a motion to approve it.
I would second that.
Okay. Just to clarify, that would be to, in the case of the special projects, to accept the recommended funding level for both highly recommended or recommended, because that adds up to the total. And then for the county projects, again, to accept the highly recommended projects because that is all there is funding for. Okay. So Commissioner Olson has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded to accept the recommended special project funding at the recommended funding level, and also the county department project funding at the recommended level. Further discussion? Commissioner Ward.
I cannot accept the recommendation because I feel there's just too many social programs in there that will come back to ask for funding and continued funding from the county and the county property tax payer dollars. One of them that was not recommended, and I have a lot of difficulty with, is the broadband. Broadband, any county meeting you go to at a federal level, at a state level, people are talking about broadband. And we have given HBC a big chunk of money, but they do not service the whole county. They only service the populated, in close to Winona areas. They've expanded a little bit, but very limited. But here we have a Centec looking to, and again, this is by no means the total cost of extending broadband, but my end of the county with the hills and the valleys and the limited service, they were looking for help to, and I know they were looking at a number of their counties that they service. They are, yes, counties they service and building out a program. And we're just saying, no, we're not going to, support a broadband project when that does come up in almost all the questions from the Winona, Engage Winona survey and stuff. And just to say no to them, but we gave HBC lots of money. And again, it's true infrastructure that will go forward for many years. It's not a one and done. It's not a social program. Broadband's pretty much a necessary element of lifestyle, just like electricity and running water is. And I do have to reiterate that the federal government changed the plans, changed the criteria that should reflect in our decision as to how we're going to spend the money. It was very scripted initially, and we did start out with that premise, but the parameters have changed, and I think we need to show flexibility in our change of our funding and where we're going to put the dollars. So I cannot support the motion.
More discussion? Otherwise, I will share my opinion. I do support these recommendations. Just in the course of me being out and about in the community, I am aware of a number of these needs. Some of them they're not places where I've actually talked to folks, but I think these are really great projects. I'm delighted that this is an opportunity for us to help the community in this way. Commissioner Ward is right, but we already did allocate $600,000 of CARES Act money and $1.6 million of these funds towards broadband. And I do agree, we should probably do more broadband. I'm hoping that there'll be some state money that'll come through for that. And in the same way that I said that I had written to Ms. Miles, I think this is the funding that's designed for community projects, and that is what we've been asked for, and there's a good variety of them, so I am going to support the motion. If there's no further discussion, Commissioner Ward.
Okay, I did have email dialogue through Acting Director Ms. Holte. And I was assured that when I look at the staffing, the ones that are hiring staffing, that they had a plan going forward how to continue if that was necessary. So like the one I can pull out, Catholic Charities of Winona hiring a community connector. And they we're recommending $80,000 for that. So did they provide a specific plan once the county has this funding source for them, how they will continue that position? I mean, that's just one, I'm just picking out one because you did tell me that they had a plan. So do we have the plans documented? So when they come again, we'll say, no, you have to follow your plan. We're not funding it again.
Yes, if I may respond rather than Administrator Holte. We're talking about the hiring a community connector or the scattered housing site. I just wanted to clarify.
Well, just any of them
Okay, yes.
any of them that say they're going to take our money and hire staff.
Yes. So for any of the staffing requests that were made, even in the not recommended projects, I went, if it was not already included in their application, back to them and asked how they plan to pay for that position into the future. Specifically for the Catholic Charity projects, the scattered housing site program is self-sustaining once it gets started after a year. Now, my impression would be that this board could then say, if they came to the board requesting additional funds, you said this was a self-sustaining program. If you haven't created a self-sustaining program, then there's no program. In addition, for the community hub community connector that would work with the community hub program, that is also a self-sustaining program. So once the work begins, it is a reimbursement program where the sort of steps that are made by clients are then reimbursed by insurance. And so the reimbursement dollars would then be used to pay the staff person or for staples or whatever it is that they need to do that work. And again, my impression would be then that if they came to the county board requesting additional funds, that you could say, well, the project was supposed to be self-sustaining and it is not. So I guess it's not in existence further. That is my understanding of those two particular positions. And the other projects that requested for like premium pay for workers or that sort of thing, their plans included additional donor base. I'm going to say donor base, it's not, I can't think of the word, raising funds from their donors, I'm sorry, to pay for that, which again, can be sustainable or not sustainable depending on how you look at that. But that was the information I gathered.
All right, thank you. I just as I feel we're opening up a door for much more, as I have always termed it philosophically, giving out of county property tax dollars in the future, because there's a lot of social programs in here. And in my opinion, again, the ARPA funds were for infrastructure types of projects. Maybe that's just my interpretation.
Going back to what the framework and the responses that came from Engage Winona. Social infrastructure was one of the second most requested items. I also have some knowledge of those projects for Catholic Charities. So we've had presentations, I don't know if the board has, but I've seen presentations several times on the hub model. And the idea is when someone in the hub completes a pathway, then there is a reimbursement for that. So it's initial startup stuff. That is a self-sustaining model. And I know with the housing request that there's state money. Once they get the structure in place, that's what the staff is supposed to do, because then we would qualify for state money to actually do the housing project. So I'm quite comfortable with those two items. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the recommendations on the American Rescue Plan Fund grant request signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Question.
Commissioner Ward.
More for staff then. What's the time? How are these funds going to be distributed and when? And then how are we going to track results? I would hope we have a result statement that goes with all these dollars.
Yes. So to start with the tracking and timelines, communication will be implemented with all applicants, both those that have been, officially funded and those that have not been funded over the next week. And that will all take place through the submittable program, which is the mechanism that we use to receive the grant applications as well as communicate with grant applicants. That is paid for by ARPA dollars. And so communication will happen over the next week, letting folks know if they have or have not been funded and what the next steps are, including confirming that their project is still planned and that they plan to move forward, that this is a reimbursement model grant. So they will be expending the dollars and submitting receipts as well as requests for reimbursement documentation to the county that will come to me to be reflected in the submittable program. It will go to Maureen as the interim county administrator to approve and review, and then it will go to the finance department for that reimbursement to take place. In addition, throughout the process, there are impact reports that are requested. So noting progress on the outcomes and impacts that they outlined within their application, any hurdles or hiccups that they may be experiencing and ways that they are mitigating those, and then the projection of if they will be completing their project by the allocated timeline that they proposed.
So we're going to be tracking this for the next several years.
Through December 31, 2024.
We've also added a workload to our own staff of tracking these dollars and the projects.
That's me.
Laura's very good at what she does.
But we are expending taxpayer dollars for your position.
We are funding that through the grant, though.
Yeah.
Correct, through ARP funds as well.
It's all taxpayer dollars. It all comes out of the same pocket.
We can give it back, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, we could have done other things with it. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kavesi, would you take over the meeting?
Surely. Item 8.7. 8.6, excuse me. Okay, this is an item to discuss conducting a formal review of the 2020 state audit and consider reviewing audits annually. Commissioner Meyer.
This is the audit report that we got in September of 2021. It was for the 2020 audit. My request is that we ask the interim administrator can give us some context for it, but so the report on compliance for each major federal program and report on internal controls over compliance showed a material weakness and a significant deficiency, and they are outlined. And then there is a section that gives us a corrective action plan. And so I think what I would like to move is that we review the corrective action plan and make sure that those issues are being addressed.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second requesting that we review the corrective action plan of the 2020 audit and have an update on how that's going. Is there discussion? Commissioner Ward.
I believe we did receive an email, County, what was happening with at least some of the corrective actions. Am I correct, Ms. Holte? Yes. Is there more than that going on that we need to have another meeting, or is that what we would be reviewing?
If the board desires for all of the corrective action items to be covered, then there would be a little bit more to provide.
All right. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Commissioner Jacob.
Well, I see that under 8.6, it says, and then reviewing audits annually. So the motion made by Commissioner Meyer seems to be different than what's on the agenda. So I don't know whether this is just a specific issue that Commissioner Meyer wants dealt with, or whether she's apparently not asking to change policy into the future, which I'm fine not changing policy into the future. And whatever makes Commissioner Meyer comfortable is fine with me. I'm not going to support the motion because I feel I can get this information without consuming staff time and public time. But so it's my position.
Madam Chair?
Okay, we have a motion.
Madam Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, I would love to review the audit annually, and I'd love to make sure that when we get the next audit, that these issues have been corrected. I only say this because the one has been a repeat finding. And it really indicates that, in particular, when you look at this, it looks as if we're not staffed at a high enough level in Health and Human Services to adequately do the audits that we need to do on our federal programs. And so I'd like to make sure that going forward that is addressed. So I don't know if I should make an amendment or a second motion or what.
As long as we're still in discussion, I guess it seems like it'd be cleaner to just vote on the motion that you already made. I don't really want to commit future boards into the, years to come, who's going to be sitting here in 12 months. We've got 1, 2, 3 positions up for election. Potentially, I might not be here. And this is a concern to you. So to change policy into the future and that board not even understanding why we changed or added that policy, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Meyer.
On the other hand, I've talked to several people on the school board now, and they were kind of surprised that we aren't doing it in public. And individuals on the city council who have pretty much said the same thing. So I think that it is, for transparency's sake, it's a thing that other elected boards do. So it seems to me that it's just really a part of our due diligence and transparency and fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers.
Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, I have no problem discussing, once we all get the audit, we can see the things. And I have to say, staff has never not provided me individually information when I've had questions to ask. So they've always been very responsive and I've gotten the answers I needed. Doing it, accepting the audit and doing it in public, I have no problem with that. I think the last couple of years, because of COVID, it did restrict some of the personalization. But one of the things, if we continue to have the state auditor, there is a charge for them coming. I don't know that we need, and it depends on the report, if we necessarily need them to come in and tell us what they put in a written report. But I think internally we could have it as a discussion item. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah. I'm completely for transparency. This is a public document. It's available online. We're not keeping anything from the public. And so I'll just stay with my position that I'm not supporting the motion.
Commissioner Wilson.
I'm just confused on the motion now, because are we looking,
Yeah.
are we looking at the future?
My motion is
Review?
really, the motion that I made was really just for the first thing to review the corrective action plan.
Yeah, we have no motion that deals with reviewing the audit as a board. Okay, we ready to vote? The motion is to review, a request to review the 2020 audit and specifically look at the corrective action update and see where we are on those actions. Is everybody clear? That's the motion. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to review the 2020 audit, especially looking at the corrective action update, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those.
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes. So at a future board meeting, we will have an update to the corrective action plan from the 2020 audit. Thank you.
Can I have another motion?
Does that take care?
I'll
Okay.
let it go for now.
Okay.
Thanks. Item 8.7 would be to discuss the commission fee for bank levy. Mr. Jacob?
Yeah, so in an email from administration, apparently we don't have everything we need for this, so I'll make a motion to table this until administration is ready to present it.
Second.
Okay. Oh,
Got a natural, huh? All right, so Commissioner Jacob has moved that we table item 8.7, which was to discuss the commission fee for bank levy, and Commissioner Ward has seconded that. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Commissioner Ward, I believe you had an announcement and maybe a request for a board action in an expedited fashion.
Yes. First of all, I want to do a big shout out and a big thank you to our Winona County Fair Board. They pulled off an excellent event again. It ran last week, Thursday through Sunday. They had good attendance. They had great events. And for people that don't know, the Fair Board is pretty much all volunteer. There's like a board, and you can run for the board. That comes up this fall. But they do all this on volunteer hours. They take vacations and they put on an event, which is just, a very huge. And just to give you an idea, the agricultural support for our 4-H children, we have a ribbon auction at the county fair. So you're just buying the ribbon showing support. You're not buying the animal. There were 105 4-Hers that brought an animal, all the way from 2 ducks to 1,700-pound deers, with children being maybe 80 pounds to, handling these animals and being very proud of it. But the auction, so 108, raised over $104,000. And that money, 75% goes to the exhibitor and 25 goes to a committee that helps make repairs and improvements to the fairgrounds. So just outstanding respect and admiration for the Fair Board. And we had our extension meeting at the fair, and we, remember the board made a decision to add to the 4-H program. They have been just doing outstanding work. The number of students that are exposed to the 4-H curriculum and the activities. So I do want to give them a big shout out and a thank you. The other item is, I've been requested by several community members and even some other locals. The Corps of Army Engineers had their open house and their plan to expand the sand site in Homer. And we did send a letter through county administration, and this was dated April 3rd, 2020, where we did object to expansion and increased use of the existing sand pile. And I would like, and I apologize, the timeline didn't allow me to get it into and the deadline for the most recent public comment period is now July 15th. So with the approval of the board, I would probably at this point just resubmit this letter that we sent back in April. It was, it is dated April, and it was County Administrator Ken Fritz. But it does say there that we do want them to work with other community and find a better place to put the sand other than expand the
A year ago.
April 2020. Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. But I think most of what's in, and we can send this out again, most of what was in here, I think we still stand by. And it goes into the public record that we're saying, in case the last letter didn't get into the public record. So I'm asking for permission to resubmit this letter to go into the public record. And do I have a consensus that it's okay that we resubmit this? I don't know that our stand has changed.
I don't object.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah, I don't, it's already a public document.
Right, right. So I just want to make sure it gets in this set of public comments and
Although I'm
everything.
pretty sure Mr. Wayne Wicca got it.
Yes, but I mean, more ammunition. And Mr. Wayne Wicca is trying to set up a Zoom with federal legislators to see if we can't work better with the Corps and finding better alternatives. Okay, I will submit it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Reiterating what
we said.
What we did.
Yes. Yeah, correct. Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Kavesi, you have a committee report and an announcement?
Yeah, I would just, again, also like to thank the Fair Committee. The fair was an excellent community event. Bob Bambenek hosted the recognitions section on Thursday afternoon, which is always very popular. I saw the vaccination clinic as a very popular stop. They were conveniently located next to the free dairy booth, so you could get your vaccination and then get some chocolate milk. So sounds like a win-win to me. But the booths were informative and interactive. We had soil and water, we had Winlac, we had other booths. So I do appreciate all the work that went into the fair. I have a report from the Winlac One Watershed, One Plan meeting that was yesterday morning. The policy committee approved working sessions for 3 additional areas. One is on the measurable goals, one is on the plan implementation program, and on the administrative and coordination section. So those